They said I let a pregnant woman drown in pain while I charted a sprained wrist. That's how fast a rumor eats your name in this place. I'd been at Riverside General all of 3 months, just long enough to know which elevators jam and which doctors bother to learn your face. Storm pounded the windows, the river gone black. The fluorescents buzzed overhead like angry bees. The air tasted like antiseptic and coffee that died hours ago. Monitors argued with one another. Footsteps slammed past my bones. The waiting room pressed their fear against the glass with every look. My name is Maya Carter, and I keep a lid on myself so I don't spill. That's the only way I survive the chaos. Count the breaths. Move the line. Don't flinch when someone calls you new girl like it's your last name. I'd been trying so hard to prove I belonged that my shoulders forgot what down felt like. You ignored her. A voice knifed through the noise. A woman with wet hair and a wedding band pointed at me over a stretcher. My daughter is pregnant and she's been crying for an hour. Every head nearby turned. A couple of techs looked away, hungry for a show, but not the splash. I was juggling a detox, an asthma flare, and a guy who had punched a wall so hard his knuckles looked like meat. The pregnant woman, Marie Cortez, per triage, lay in hallway bed 4.5, one hand on her stomach, breath stuttering. 28 weeks, abdominal pain, contractions. An external-fetal monitor strap cut a line across her gown. The paper tray spit out on the counter, ignored in the pile. I haven't ignored her, I said, but my voice shook, which is the same as lying in a place like this. I'm on it. I stepped to the monitor. The baseline looked high, tachycardic, and the valleys dipped late, not with the peaks, but after them. Late decels, variability thin as a whisper. Not good. Not wait your turn. Training snapped into place in my skull. Abruption? Hypoxia? The plan written on the board, fluids, terbutaline, send upstairs when OB answers, suddenly felt like a locked door with fire behind it. Dr. Levin, I called to the attending as he blew past, clipboard in a fist. Her strip is showing late decels with minimal variability. Give the terbutaline, he said without looking at me. She's contracting. We quiet the uterus. We buy time. That pattern's not contractions. That's placenta screaming, I said, quieter than I meant. My hands were already moving. Wristband, chart, meds. The bag hanging from her pole read ampicillin sulbactam. She'd been labeled no allergies at triage. The printed label on the bag matched a different MRN than the bracelet. I swallowed. Who started this antibiotic? OB wanted cover. Don't slow us down, Carter, a senior nurse snapped. You've got eyes on 15 people? No? Keep moving. My heart banged at my ribs. I scanned the chart. 2 Cortez files open in the system. Maria with an accent over the I. 34 weeks, penicillin allergy flagged in red. Marie, without the accent, 28 weeks, no allergies. The bracelet said Marie. The bag said Maria. 2 patients. 1 poll. I thumbed the call button for OB. The line clicked, then silence, then a wrong extension. Radiology. The storm had chewed the paging system. I hung up, tried again, got a busy tone that felt like a dare. Stop the ampicillin, I said, and my voice didn't sound like mine. I clamped the line. Wrong patient. Are you accusing me of a med error? The charge nurse hissed, loud enough for the room. Judgment slid over me like cold water. Heads turned. New girl making noise. The fetal monitor answered me with a prolonged decel that stunned the hallway into stillness for one breath. Then everything sped up. Marie's face went gray. Her pulse on my fingers raced and skipped. The printer spit new paper like a warning. Doctor. Levin. I stepped in front of him. My mouth was dry. This isn't preterm labor. Look at the strip. Look at it. We need OB now. Blood ready and no terbutaline. Please. He finally met my eye. He hated being challenged. I hated that I shook while doing it. He leaned over the strip, jaw tight. The power flickered with the thunder, monitors blinking in and out like breath held too long, then snapping back with a chorus of alarms. The ampicillin bag dangled heavy in my hand. A lab result populated on the screen with a soft chime that felt obscene. Marie Cortez, type O negative. The chart on the board read O positive. Not the same person, not the same plan, not the same risks. Jesus, Dr. Levin said, reaching for the phone. Get OB here now. Call blood bank. And a second monitor across the hall exploded into alarm. Another fetal heart tracing screaming from a different stretcher. The name on that one, Maria with the accent, glaring up at me. The lights dipped again. The waiting room pressed in. Everyone looked at me like this was my baby to save or lose. I held the wrong bag and the right terror. And then the printer line on Marie's strip flattened into a silence I didn't trust. My name is Maya Carter, and I'm 28 years old. I work as a nurse at Riverside General, a bustling urban hospital that can feel more like a battlefield than a place of healing. Tonight marks the start of yet another 12-hour shift, a night shift that stretches into the early dawn, when the world begins to murmur, but the chaos of the ER never really stops. The hum of machinery intertwines with the distant wail of sirens, and the sharp scent of antiseptic hangs like a veil, mingling with the decay of stale coffee left over from earlier. The coldness of the tiles bites into my feet as I walk the familiar path, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, reminding me that I'm essentially a cog in a relentless machine. I thrive in this environment, or at least, I sacrifice the stability of a classroom for the unpredictability of shifts and the endless cycle of facing life and death. The hours spent studying and training consumed my life. Relationships faded as I chose to dedicate myself to my patients instead of my family. My brother's wedding, those milestones in my friends' lives, they all dimmed in the rearview mirror because the hospital has its own demands, and I answered them without hesitation. Sometimes, late at night, when the walls seemed to close in, I remember how I'd promised myself I'd never lose touch with my family. Yet here I am, 2 years away from them, trying to stay connected with a quick video call before a shift, wishing I could be there at my niece's birthday instead of in scrubs. Sacrifices run deep, but I tell myself it's all for the greater good. The older patients I care for often remind me of my grandmother, whose hands were once so steady and warm. I took her in when she got sick, balancing my life as best I watch as Dr. Levin strides past with his clipboard, and I know he has a reputation for working as if the nurses are mere shadows in the room. A senior nurse shoots a glance my way, her brows furrowed, like she knows something is coming. I notice a family in the waiting area, faces etched with worry, while they whisper harshly about the wait time, their anger spilling through in every frustrated huff. There's an unspoken agreement in this place, something in the air that says trouble is lurking, that something could unravel at any moment if we aren't careful. I remind myself to breathe, to stay focused, to place humanity above the chaos. It's why I'm here, after all. Each patient is a story, not just a number or a diagnosis. I can see the fear etched into the faces of those I treat, the fragility of their situations drowning them in uncertainty. I suppose it's that understanding that pushes me forward, even when my own world feels like it's collapsing around me. But something do. Just as I turn to check on Marie Cortez again, the alarms blare, piercing through the noise like a herald of chaos creeping closer. I can feel everyone's eyes on me, judgment and desperation squeezing my heart, silently summoning me to act. The air is thick with tension, and there's a heavy sense that I'm on the brink of something I can't fully grasp yet. It's not just another night. It's the beginning of a storm I'm not sure I'm ready to face. The lights flickered again. A dim electric pulse that matched the rising tension crawling through the ER like an unwelcome insect. I could feel it at the back of my throat, a stinging sensation that warned me something was about to blow. I stepped toward hallway bed 4.5, where Marie lay, a world of pain etched across her face. As I approached, I noticed an older man pacing at the foot of her bed, his voice rising above the chaos. "Why haven't you done anything? My daughter is in agony." He threw his hands up, desperation spilling into a. I met his gaze, forcing myself to hold my ground. "We're actively monitoring her." "Actively? She's been here for an hour." His words sliced through my calm, moving like a knife, and I could feel the judgment wrap around me like a noose. I opened my mouth to defend myself, to explain the chaos of the night. But before I could, the charged nurse joined the throng, stepping in beside me, arms crossed. "Sir, your daughter is in a busy ER. She's being taken care of," she shot back, a practiced edge coating her voice. It should have felt like support, but it only deepened my sense of isolation, amidst a crowd ready to pull me under. The old man's eyes darted between us, as if he was trying to decide whom to blame first, and that was the moment I realized it was only the beginning. I turned back to Marie, her face pale, and I could hear her shallow breaths beneath the din. My heart raced in time with the monitor, and I considered my next move carefully. If you've ever been unjustly I was surrounded by their fear, and I hated that it was focused on me. Striding back to the chart, I jotted down her symptoms, my hands steady despite the chaos echoing in my ears. "Give her something, please," the man insisted, his voice rising again like a tide threatening to tip over. It wouldn't stop unless I acted. I glanced at my watch. Time was slipping away, and I knew the consequences all too well. My resolve steeled. I approached the man again, meeting his gaze head-on. "I understand your frustration, but we're doing everything we can for your daughter." The firmness in my voice felt foreign yet necessary. I was here to be a voice for my patients, not just a shadow in a corner. But my assertion wasn't enough. "This is a joke. You people don't care." The venom in his words stung me, but I could not allow it to drown out the gravity of my responsibility. The anger and desperation ignited the waiting room, the tension wrapping tighter and tighter around my chest. Little did I know that this attitude would put me against the entire hospital. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks as the family simmered around me, talk swelling with whispers and accusations. "Is she even supposed to be on meds if you can't get her pain under control?" one of the younger faces said, with a sneer that twisted my insides. I stifled the urge to snap back. Anger wasn't my weapon. I turned back to the monitor, focus narrowing. I scribbled down yet another note as the alarms blared once more, demanding attention just as the doctor who so often dismissed me arrived. Dr. Levin strode toward us, clipboard in hand, his brow furrowed as if the chaos was an inconvenience. He barely acknowledged my presence. "What's the problem now?" he grumbled, skimming the room with an indifference that twisted something in me. The weight of the moment crushed down as I felt the eyes of everyone still fixed on me, and I forced myself to maintain control. "Marie is in distress. I think we need to reassess her," I said, the words flowing from me like a prayer, my resolve palpable. Dr. Levin looked at me, annoyance curling his lip. "We just need to get through this shift, Maya. You're overreacting. Move on," he snapped, ignoring my careful observations. My stomach dropped as his dismissal washed over me, further fueling the energy around us. The atmosphere felt thick, heavy, with invisible shards of doubt that threatened to shatter. In that instant, destiny was already decided, and I still didn't know. I stood still, breathing in the noise, recording it all in the back of my mind. I wasn't going to allow this man to dictate the narrative. With a steady hand, I wrote another note in the chart, documenting our dilemmas and the severity of Marie's condition. My heart raced and my hands trembled slightly, but I wouldn't let it show. I resolved to stay calm, to see this through, but the moment was fleeting, like a breath of air before the plunge. The alarms continued to blare, and I felt the tension crystallize in my chest. I was grappling with more than just patience. I was wrestling with the very fabric of the looming hospital politics. The weight of their eyes bore down on me. As the argument between the doctor and the family escalated, I could sense the storm gathering inside me. The calm before a storm, an omen of everything that lay ahead. And it was in that silence that everything began to collapse. The fractures in my world were becoming too wide to navigate. And the chaos I'd been trying to manage wasn't just in the room. It was infiltrating my resolve, and I could feel the pressure building, ready to burst. The clamor of accusations, distress, and uncertainty wrapped around me tightly, and all I could think was how quickly it could all unravel. You're just here to clock in and out. The humiliation stung. Wasn't I the one on the front lines, juggling these lives like fragile glass? I wanted to scream out, to defend myself, but the words strangled in my throat, trapped by the fear of further igniting the fire. I took a breath. I had to keep focused. I had Marie's life in my hands. If I didn't act decisively, the chaos continued to unfold around me. With every tick of the clock, I felt the pressure mounting. The attending was on the warpath, and I was the target in a storm of judgment. I tried to meet Dr. Levin's gaze again, to communicate the urgency of the situation, but his eyes darted away as if he couldn't bear to acknowledge me. It was clear my attempts at reason were falling on deaf ears. "Look at her," I practically begged. "She's in distress. We need to—" He cut me off with a wave of his hand, impatience dripping from his tone. "Move on, Maya. We've got bigger issues here than one screaming patient." Like a slap in the face, his dismissal echoed. I stepped back, feeling the eyes of the gathered crowd piercing into me, each gaze a silent accusation, as if I alone held the power to save her. I had no idea it was still going to get worse. Distracted by the chaos, I reached for a crumpled medical record, its edges frayed like my patience. The ink smudged slightly on my fingertips as I hastily checked her vitals again. The numbers flashed across the screen, terrifyingly high. My heart sank. "Marie, just hang in there," I whispered, stroking her hand. The warmth of her skin felt like a fleeting ghost, and all I could think was, what if it was too late? Suddenly, the alarms blared louder, making my heart jump in my chest. The air felt electric, charged with anxiety. I swung around to see another nurse scrambling. "Maya, we're losing power in here. Get back up." "Back up for what?" I shot back, though I knew I wasn't really asking. What was I trying to protect? My sanity? The swarm of panic, I felt cornered, a rat in a maze, desperately searching for an exit. Just as I began to lose hope, the commotion around us seemed to shift. An attending rushed in, eyes wide and hunched over a clipboard as if it held the secret to the world. "What's happening?" he barked. "Marie's in distress. I think we need to reassess," I started, feeling a flicker of light at the end of a long tunnel. Maybe, just maybe, someone would finally listen. But he waved me off, turning his attention to the family instead. "We're doing all we can," he said stiffly, steeling himself from me. I felt abandoned, small, a whisper lost in a crescendo of voices. And then came the fallout. "You're incompetent," the father spat, eyes blazing. "You've let her suffer long enough. You don't belong here." The words landed on me with a heavy thud, a physical blow that split my resolve like a splintered bone. I watched as several heads nodded in agreement, as if my very presence had been deemed a plague in this hospital. I stood there motionless, the world around me crashing like shattered glass. I felt my cheeks flare, the heat of shame mixing with a righteous indignation that surged like blood through my veins. I was here, pouring my heart and soul into these patients, into this job, and all they could see was the new girl, a target to vent their frustrations on. It was suffocating. But just as the fire of their words began to warm me, a sudden blaring alarm pierced through the din again. A chilled silence fell as everyone turned toward the sound. Dr. Levin's face went white, a ghost overshadowing his bravado. I stood frozen, glancing back at Marie, whose monitor now screamed with an irregular rhythm. This was not a false alarm. It was a signal that something had gone dangerously wrong. My stomach dropped. Just then, a senior nurse came barreling through, her lab coat stained, the fabric whipping around her like a tattered flag in the wind. "Get ready for transfusion. We've got an emergency," she shouted, urgency threading through her voice. And that's when I heard a voice that would change everything. A nurse from the back yelled, "Maria's in trouble too. She's crashing." The room felt like it was spinning. The realization hit me like a freight train. I had been focusing on the wrong patient all along. Marie was the one who needed immediate care. But Maria, with an accent on the I, was also in danger. The world went dark in my vision, my heart racing, ready to shatter under the weight of what I'd just discovered. I could hear the whispers, the judgments rising from the crowd. Would I be able to withstand this? The stakes had never been higher, and I was the one standing at the edge of the precipice, ready to fall. I stood there, rooted in place, as the weight of the world felt like an anchor dragging me down. Alarm bells screamed around me, an ominous choir that mirrored the panic throbbing in my chest. One patient, Marie, was in distress. Yet another patient, Maria, a name fetching dread from the depths of my bone. Now there was an urgency in the air that felt sharper than any knife. And suddenly, I was the center of everyone's focus, their murmurs echoing my every insecurity. "You're the new girl, and you've let it spiral." Her finger jabbed toward me as if branding me guilty on the spot, and I could feel the collective gaze of the gathered crowd pressing in, a silent jury waiting for me to stumble. I wanted to argue, to explain that it was all a chaotic mix, the tumult of being a nurse in a bustling emergency room. But the words rose and fell like a tide, then disappeared into the void, leaving only an echo of defeat. "They're suffering because of your inexperience." The older man, Marie's father, advanced toward me, his anger a live wire. "What do you expect us to do? Watch her fade away?" I didn't know how to respond. My head spun with the noise, and before I could gather myself, he pulled back, gesturing dramatically, his voice rising as it cut through my thoughts. "We trusted you. You're just a kid playing doctor, a child among giants." The thought hung in the air, festering. I opened my mouth, desperate to throw back a response that could quell the fear disguised as blame. But then the urgency from the other bed hit me again, slicing through my paralysis. Maria needed help. I had to act. Yet every attempt to speak felt buried under the weight of expectations, assumptions, and the bared teeth of consequences clawing at my resolve. "Enough of her excuses," that same frustrated voice echoed. Someone from the crowd stepped forward, angry brows furrowed. "She doesn't belong here. She's just making excuses for why she's failing." Each word felt like a slap, heating my cheeks while my stomach coiled into knots. I was standing there, a punching bag for the frustrations of everyone around me, the waiting family, the exhausted nurses, even my own anger boiling beneath the surface. It wasn't fair. My heart pounded, each echo amplifying to a deafening roar that threatened to drown me. I could feel the air compressing, the space around me collapsing with every accusation. "Fine, just send me back. Fire me." My voice rose, fueled by the tumult in my gut, desperate to regain control. My finger trembled with a powerless rage, my desperate attempts to articulate my awareness of the chaos. "I've been doing my best here. If you think I don't care—" But before I could finish, I was interrupted again. "Your best isn't good enough," my own colleague scoffed, her eyes hard with contempt. "You seriously think you're ready for this?" The humiliation seared through me, raw and real. I fought the urge to back away, shrink into the space between the walls. But something deep down flickered, an ember stubbornly clinging to life. "You don't see me. You don't hear me," I spat, voice nearly cracking under the weight of emotions that threatened to burst free. "Marie is scared, and I'm scared too. I'm still learning." Now the audience's whispers mingled with my heartbeat. Every head turned my way, like a table of judges ready to condemn. I could sense the gravity of what I'd just said, the vulnerability wrapped in desperation. It made me feel even smaller, standing in my scrubs, while sharp glances branded me a liability. I glanced at Marie's father again. He still wore that fierce expression, arm crossed tightly, frustration chipping away at his resolve. "What will it take for you to act, to care?" "I care!" I shouted, my voice a surprising volume, cutting through the clouds of judgment. "But I'm navigating a storm here. It's overwhelming. I exist in this chaos where lives hang by a thread. How had I let it come to this? I'm doing everything I can, but I can't do it alone. I need your trust. I need to know you believe in me. I need you to let me fight for your daughter." The words tumbled from my lips, each one raw and bleeding with emotion. Yet every glance aimed my way felt accusatory, another reminder of my shortfalls, my limitations. Incompetent, irresponsible. The crowd reacted, a wave of agitation swirling. "How can you be in here, operating on our trust, and yet let a simple mistake happen? This is life and death." That was when the room tilted, shadows creeping closer around me, like monsters. I felt as though I were teetering on the edge, with only a fragile grasp on my sanity. The humiliation mounted, clawing at my throat, and the urge to sink into the floor nearly overwhelmed me. I'd taken a risk by standing up, but it felt unwelcome, each attempt to defend myself wielding fresh accusations lapping at my soul. "Your failures will haunt you, you know." The charge nurse's words dripped with disdain, a warning laced with venom. "You think you'll walk away from this unscathed?" Yes, I fought. Let it gnaw at me. Perhaps they were right. Perhaps I didn't belong here. Every bit of doubt, every whispered fear echoed louder than the last. My spirit dipped low, heavy beneath the weight of their anger mixed with the gravity of the moment. But just as my well of resolve threatened to run dry, a spark ignited somewhere deep inside. I knew my patience deserved more than apathy and scorn. My hands trembled less out of fear and more out of a determination that coiled beneath my skin. Maybe I was just the rookie, the new girl, but I refused to buckle beneath their scorn. I took a step forward. "You're not giving me a choice, are you? I won't sit silently while lives hang in the balance." The air shifted, charged with the weight of what was happening. And then, as if heralding my defiance, for the briefest moment, I caught a glimmer of movement at the edge of the crowd. Someone stood, caught between two worlds, one of authority and another of support. It sent a fresh wave of determination flooding through me. There was still hope. I didn't know who it was or if they would stand with me, but I felt the power of collective spirit resisting the tide of despair. Light pierced through the dense fog of judgment and blame, anchoring me as everything else threatened to slip away. Marie deserves my best, and I won't let you or anyone take that from me, I declared, my heart racing, ready to defend the very essence of my career, my choices and me. Because if I was anything, I was a fighter. And maybe, just maybe, someone trusted I could be more than what they saw. The storm in my chest hadn't settled, and as the chaos swirled around me, its winds pressed painfully again. I had stood my ground and shouted into the storm, but now doubt and exhaustion threatened to unravel me. Marie's father still bore that look, a blend of desperation and fury. Tension coiled in the atmosphere, thick enough to choke on it. I turned back to the monitors, desperate for clarity, a guide amid the madness. They flashed their readouts defiantly, each blip, beep, and alarm a reminder that I was powerless against the investigations they hinted at. The revelation of my mistakes loomed large, but there had to be more to this story, a hidden thread woven through the night's turmoil. Just as I closed my eyes for a moment, breathing deeply, ready to center myself, a voice cut through my thoughts. "Maya, I think you need to see this." It was Ava, a nurse I barely knew. She was often the quiet one, shuffling behind charts and the chaos, barely acknowledged. Her expression held a weight behind those usual expressions of indifference, a spark of urgency that caught me off guard. I asked, instinctively bracing myself for bad news. She ushered me away from the escalating din of accusations, leading me down the dimly lit corridor where flickering lights cast uncertain shadows. We turned a corner and my heart lurched. A hospital room stood ajar, the sliver of light spilling onto the floor like a beacon. "I found this," Ava murmured, producing a crumpled document from her pocket. My breath caught as she unfolded it, revealing an old chart. The ink faded, mistranscribed, and the words blurred under the hospital's harsh lighting. "It leads back to Marie." A knot twisted tighter in my chest as I strained to see the details. The name at the top echoed in my head, Maria Cortez, the same hospital number. My heart raced with a sharp pang of recognition. The struggle I'd been fighting to differentiate between the two women had taken on another layer. I leaned closer, and my eyes landed on a scribbled note in the margins, obscured beneath layers of time. "Look here," Ava said, cresting into my field of vision. She pointed to a string of diagnostic codes, and my heart dropped. "It says she had a miscarriage nearly a month ago, but is listed as still being pregnant now." My mind swam, grappling with the implications. "But why would they—" "That's not it," Ava continued, urgency gripping her voice. "There's something else." She flipped the document further down. "This note says she was flagged as a potential at-risk patient, but the orders don't match up." At that moment, something shivered at the edge of my awareness, something that didn't feel right. The notes disjointed, the medical emergency fizzling out of focus, as questions snowballed in my mind, displacing my certainty. "What do you mean?" Ava hesitated, her gaze darting back to the corridor as if someone lurked in the shadows. She was supposed to be under constant observation in the past few weeks, but look at this. The last entry was weeks ago, and no follow-up since. My heart pounded further, a rhythm of disbelief mingling with fear. But why didn't anyone exactly? Why hasn't anyone mentioned this? She stepped closer, the air electric with the weight of our discovery. "It feels like none of this is adding up." My breath quickened. So what plays into my responsibility here? It could mean that's why she's presenting like this now. But it also means there's a larger problem with protocols. She paused, searching my eyes. What if this isn't about us? The pieces started clicking into place, shadows forming a clearer picture, and dread pooled in my stomach. If Marie's history had been swept aside, what else lay buried? What kind of oversight had we been part of? My instincts jolted, grasping at strings I hadn't seen before. Threads tangled in bureaucracy and human error. Would they really let a patient slip through like this? My voice cracked, nerves bared for the truth that threatened to unravel. "Then we need to bring it up." Ava stepped closer, her tone firm. "This isn't just about you. If there's negligence involved, we have to shine a light on it." Before I could respond, a commotion erupted down the hall. The alarm systems erupted again with a furious blaze, bringing everyone to their feet. We turned instinctively, the reality of urgency weighing heavy, as if we were tied to the floor. Suddenly, from the corner of my eye, I spotted something, the clip of a badge, hanging loosely on the ground near a nurse's station. I recognized it as belonging to a senior staff member, someone crucial who had just doubled down on berating me moments ago. But the badge was flipped, and a handwritten note hung loose from the plastic covering, fluttering like it existed in a world apart than the one I stood in. "What's that?" I asked, moving toward the badge, my instincts flaring again. Ava frowned. "I don't know, but you shouldn't." I lifted the badge, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. As I turned it over, the scrawl hit hard. "Cover the discrepancies. All cases must align. No mistakes." A chill slithered down my spine, sending icy tendrils of fear through me. It felt like a dark omen, a shadow, holding promise of conspiracy just below the surface. What does this mean?" My voice trembled. Dread wrapped around me like a shroud. I could barely comprehend the implications. "I don't know," Ava breathed, stepping back as if the very air thickened with threats. "But it means we're not just dealing with a mistake here. We might be fighting something much larger than ourselves." I realized then that the noise of the alarm was not just a random occurrence, but the backdrop for our impending revelation. My heart hammered as I clutched the badge tighter. In that moment, as the urgency swelled around us and shadows danced against the walls, I recognized something clear and profound. Someone knew the truth, had been sitting on it all along, and just let it slip. I stood frozen, the crumpled badge in my hand, feeling heavier than the weight of the world. Ava's words reverberated in my mind, the implications cascading like a domino effect as the chaos swirled around us, a disorienting storm that threatened to swallow me whole. The note on the badge taunted me, a whisper of collusion that cut deeper than any accusation thrown my way. Before I could process it, that same charge nurse, the one who had seemed so formidable just a moment ago, stormed down the corridor, her face twisted in a mix of fury and alarm. "What's going on here?" she demanded, eyes darting back. The urgency of the situation punched me in the gut. Marie's in danger, and we're piecing together something that feels much larger than just this night shift, I said, voice steady but laced with panic. "Larger? Don't be ridiculous," she snapped, dismissing the air of urgency that hung over us. Something in me flared at her arrogance, but I couldn't let it distract me. "You're in over your head, Carter." Yet in that moment, I noticed the dawning realization creeping into her eyes. Whether it was from my words or the possibility of the deep-seated truths that lay beneath the surface, the shift was palpable. She faltered, hesitation evident as she peered down the hallway, uncertainty clouding her judgment. But then, in that surreal blur of chaos, I saw Dr. Levin emerge from the frantic wave of bodies rushing toward us, his face etched with the same cold disregard that I'd come to know all too well. "What's the ruckus?" he barked, but when he caught sight of the badge in my hand, his expression hardened, lips pressing into a thin line. "Look at this," I said, brandishing the evidence like a weapon, the moment crackling with tension. I didn't have a plan beyond simply laying out the truth. And I wasn't going to allow anyone to sweep this under the rug anymore. This isn't just about Marie. It's about negligence and a cover-up. Dr. Levin opened his mouth, probably to shut me down with his signature disdain. But I wasn't letting this moment slip away. "This is your second chance to step up, Levin. You need to see this," I added, praying this was all leading to the resolution I desperately sought. "Let me see," he said with a dismissive wave. "Now scrutinizing the badge." A split second dragged on, and as he glanced at the note, an observant silence fell over us, the bustling ER momentarily frozen in time. A bead of sweat trickled down my back, anxiety thrumming against my skin. "Every word on that badge hints to deceit," I said, anger flaring as adrenaline coursed through me. "The patients deserve to know the truth, and we owe it to them to stand up for what's right." The father of Marie, still invested in the chaos unfolding, stepped forward again, his anger morphing into a semblance of concern. "What's happening?" he questioned sharply, approaching us, unease plain on his face. You all should be fighting for my daughter, not each other. Someone in the crowd pointed at the badge, accusing fingers flaring nervously. That's the problem, isn't it? They don't know what they're doing. Enough! I screamed, cutting through the war of voices, my words teetering on the edge of fury. We don't fix this by shaming each other. We have to acknowledge that lives are on the line, real lives. Dr. Levin's eyes flicked up from the notes as confusion morphed into something resembling fear, shadows creeping over his features. This isn't supposed to happen. I'll deal with this afterwards, he stammered, trying to assert power from an increasingly tenuous position. And what about Marie? What happens when she doesn't get the treatment she desperately needs? Or Maria, for that matter? I felt almost pity for him, this man who had wielded authority like a weapon only to be caught squarely in the web he had woven. His facade of calmlessness began to crack, the weight of recognition dawning on him. In that instant, I saw it, the flicker of fear in his eyes. Before he could muster a response, Ava stepped beside me, resolute. The hospital can't keep this under wraps, she declared, and I felt the tide shift. Not anymore. Dr. Levin turned on Ava, eyes blazing. And it was clear he was losing footing amid the swirling heat. You think this is a game? You'll regret this. I've got connections, he began, when something in the atmosphere solidified into an overwhelming weight. The hospital's secrets were bearing down like a storm. Oh, but it's not a game, I cut in, capturing everyone's attention. This is a matter of accountability. You don't get to dodge the truth any longer. The children, even the families, are losing faith because of the likes of you. A sudden silence enveloped us. My breath hitched, the unyielding tension palpable as anger rippled through the crowd. I watched as the attendees exchanged glances, some nodding with newfound understanding, breaking away from the blanket of uncertainty that had shrouded us. Regardless of who we are, if we stand together, we can expose the truth, I pressed, emboldened by every life that lay broken. The charge nurse folded her arms tightly, conflicted, yet grasping at something almost human beneath layers of her defenses. But if we expose ourselves, it could ruin lives, she challenged me. But even she felt the pull of truth. Injustice breeds more injustice, I replied sharply. But the price of silence is far too great. The father took a shuddering breath and stepped closer, his anger replaced by desperation. But what if we lose everything? I won't sacrifice my daughter for this reckless pursuit. But we could save her. Don't you see? By moving forward, we stand a chance. We must fight, not just for Marie, but for every patient who's ever become a number, I urged, feeling the fire in my voice ignite something in those around me. Dr. Levin shifted back, planting firm feet against the cold linoleum floor, stubbornness pulling at his brow. You're overreacting, and you'll regret this, he warned weakly, staving off the unraveling of his carefully constructed reality. But the tide was turning against him. A nurse stepped forward, fists clenched. Enough. We've had enough of your excuses. Accountability is mandatory before any more lives are destroyed. Then it hit me. A culmination of everything. The badge, the fear, the dread. The thoughts flared, and with them came the clarity that sat just out of reach before. Then let's make a choice right now, I said, breathing into that space of defiance that started to absorb the uncertainty surrounding us. I took a step toward Dr. Levin, head held high, resolve thickening within. We take this to the board. We'll tell them everything, the charts, the negligence, the truth. We owe that much to everyone who walked these halls. In that instant, I flicked my gaze from Dr. Levin to the small crowd now gathered, their expressions taut with expectation. I was prepared to confront the storm, my heart driving forward. Oh, for God's sake, Dr. Levin spat. the remnants of power slipping from him like grains of sand. You think this means anything? I guarantee you'll end up regretting this. And yet, the collective energy spiraled, a wave cresting toward clarity as we pressed closer, resolute, demanding justice from the shadows he had so tightly clung to. No more, I breathed, grounding myself in the moment, my decision made irrevocable by a symphony of shared hope. We are worth more than your fear. Dr. Levin staggered back, swallowed by the swell of voices that began to harmonize around us, courage growing in the veins of those once divided. All the doubts, accusations, dignity eclipsing darkness, the truth would prevail. And for the first time, I tasted the raw breath of freedom, swept up in the moment where every ounce of impossibility became possible. Time's up, I stated calmly, turning away the years of indifference. Truth isn't just a whisper anymore, it's a roar. I stood at the edge of the ER, staring out into the dimly lit waiting room. It felt like a lifetime had passed since that night, a night filled with chaos, raw emotions, and my draining struggle against the tide of indifference that nearly drowned me. There was a time when I questioned if I'd made the right choice in leaving the classroom for the frenetic life of a nurse, but on that night, as the alarms screamed and accusations swirled, I found my voice and my purpose. Months had passed since we calm. The fallout had been intense. There were investigations. Some of us stood on the front line, while others scrambled to protect their own interests. But as I stood there, the adrenaline of that moment crystallized into something I hadn't anticipated: the birth of a new culture in the ER. We began to demand accountability not just for ourselves, but for our patients. It became our rallying cry, a commitment to ensuring every voice mattered. Slowly, I saw my colleagues transform, each becoming advocates for the vulnerable instead of bystanders. I felt a sense of pride swell within me. The old faces had shifted to embrace a camaraderie and vigilance that had been sorely missing. There was a lightness in the air that hadn't existed before. The once overwhelming chaos had softened into a rhythmic pulse of life, a busy, messy, warm embrace of community. I often found myself smiling in the hallways. Those fleeting moments of connection, nurses hugging doctors, patients leaving with words. I had shed that skin long ago. I was now Maya, a nurse, an advocate, and someone who had learned the hard way about the weight of human lives, the importance of a name, and the power of standing up for what is right. It's funny how one chaotic night, filled with conflict and fear, had turned into my new beginning. I never imagined I'd find that courage within myself to challenge authority and speak up on behalf of others. It had become my greatest strength. Today, Marie and Maria both thrive, their stories a beacon of the hospital's renewed dedication to patient care. I'd learned something essential from each patient and every confrontation I'd faced. The irony lay in the unexpected success born from strife, how the storm turned into a catalyst for change. This place, once a battlefield of sorts, now flourished with humanity. And standing in the ER, I realized I wasn't just responding to emergencies. I was nurturing new life, life infused with hope, resilience, and connection. A few weeks had passed since our revelation, and things felt different. Not just for me, but for everyone who stepped through the double doors of the ER. We had become a family, bound by the shared desire for accountability and compassion. It was a lesson learned in the fire of chaos, and we were all better for it. This shift, with its usual mix of chaos and concern, felt oddly serene. We navigated it together, every nurse, every doctor, every tech in sync. Empowered by what we'd forged together, I felt a wave of pride wash over me as I greeted my colleagues, their smiles genuine, their energy uplifting. Gone were the days of throwing accusations around like confetti. Now we leaned on each other, ready to support not just our patients, but also one another. As the afternoon progressed, I walked toward the break room, ready to grab some much-needed coffee. That was when I overheard a couple of nurses chatting. I hesitated, not wanting to interrupt, but their conversation pulled at my heart. "Can you believe it?" one mentioned, a mix of disbelief and pride in her tone. "Marie's coming back this week for a follow-up. She says the baby's kicking like there's no tomorrow." The other nurse beamed. "That's fantastic. She's been through so much, and now she gets to look forward to her future." The warmth in their voices hit me, a tangible reminder of the impact we'd collectively made. I approached them, smiles breaking across our faces, and shared a moment of laughter. A brief pause before diving back into the bustling ER. Then something caught my eye. Marie herself, walking in with her mother, and an unmistakable glow reflecting off the soft light of the mid-afternoon sun. She was practically beaming, cradling her baby bump in a way that melted the worries of the world around us. "Look who it is!" I exclaimed, and the energy shifted, creating a ripple of recognition throughout the room. Everyone turned, faces lighting up as they saw her. "Marie!" we shouted, and she laughed, that joyful sound echoing against the walls. "Maya, I had to come see you all. You saved us," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for fighting for me, for fighting for all of us." "Just doing our job," I replied, holding back tears. But there was something more. We were sharing a moment, a powerful one that bridged the gap between patient and caregiver, between fear and hope. Her victory felt like ours collectively. It was a reminder of everything we had stood for. "That's right. Teamwork makes the dream work," someone chimed in from the crowd. Laughter bubbling among us as we celebrated life, coming back into the fold. As the day waxed on, I received a text from Dr. Levin. "Let's talk. I want to know how we can strengthen our procedures further. No more secrets." I smiled, excitement flickering inside me. The resistance I had faced was beginning to crumble under the weight of our shared mission to prioritize care. Not too long after, the momentum we built began to spill over into meetings, discussions, and plans. We pushed to establish protocols for reporting patients needing extra attention and worked to create channels of communication. The changes felt massive, yet perfectly natural. We were not just caregivers. We were allies, willing to demand more for our patients and ourselves. Months down the line, as I hung my scrubs on the hook before heading out, I relished the laughter and camaraderie that filled the air. That night, the hallway echoed with chatter, the noise alive with the stories woven through each of our shifts. Each laugh wrapped around me like a warm embrace. I stepped outside, taking a deep breath of the cool night air. I knew the challenges ahead wouldn't disappear, but they would be faced with resilience, a community in solidarity. I looked up at the stars. I wanted to make a difference, and that was precisely what we were doing. The storm had passed, but it had left a brighter light in its wake. No matter what waves might come next, I would hold on to that truth. Together, we'd weather any storm. So here's my call to action. If you felt that energy, that drive, then you know what you need to do. Subscribe immediately so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, so this message gets heard. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about where this journey might lead. And for goodness sake, share this with at least 5 friends who need to hear that change is possible. Let's keep this momentum alive, because every voice matters, and together we can make waves.